Okay, if you could just tell us your name, your pronouns, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Sam Carwyn, she, her, hers. I am 40 plus now, and I live in Colorado. I've been here 5 COVID years. I was born in New York and then raised in Nebraska. And then my family's kind of all over, mainly in the South, but all over. I'm a parent. I have an 18-year-old, and then I have a bonus kid who's 26 now from my foster parent days.
That is great. How's the weather out there for you, by the way?
It's actually nice. I was laughing because my son's in North Carolina and he's had more snow over the last 2 weeks than I've had in Colorado.
No, I'm recording this from Pittsburgh, where we're still digging out and had our first 30-degree day in about 10 days.
That's
And
wild.
the people walking around in shorts because that's what certain people do when it's 30 degrees outside.
It's almost like a win
Almost.
comparatively.
So I know that you are a big disability justice advocate. Um, when you hear the phrase loving engagement, what does it mean to you personally? And how does it show up in the spaces you help create?
I think it starts from a place of curiosity, of I don't know what I don't know. And when you start from that place, then people get to tell you about themselves authentically. They get to show up without the idea as if they have to be a particular thing because you have expectations. Instead, they get to be themselves, show up authentically, and then feel love and appreciation just by being themselves in the space that you've created.
Okay. Curiosity. That's fascinating. So you're saying that the curiosity is sort of a bridge to authenticity.
Yeah, it's you coming into a space. For instance, obviously you're a reverend, you're ordained, and instead of me being like, oh, that must be how he is or what he thinks, I'm just curious of like, who are you? What do you think? And then that allows you to fill in the blanks rather than I wrote a story and now you're kind of crossing it out and then putting in your authentic self.
Are there specific words, approaches, or languages that you think that we should use or avoid when practicing loving engagement?
Yeah, I think for me, it's use the words people want you to use, and that requires real conversation. But that for me is the first part is some people like people with disabilities, other people prefer disabled people. And so being able to talk and find out what are the words that you want me to use, recognizing that that might be different from person to person, even if they have the same diagnosis, even if they have the same experiences, and also know that the broader language in our communities often minimize what someone's experiencing. So I hear right now a lot of this notion of like neurospicy. And there's nothing wrong with that word, but to me it's trying to make it cool, so to speak, rather than acknowledging that it's a struggle. Having ADHD is difficult. There are hard parts of it. And so I think sometimes we use language to try and soften the idea of something. Oh, well, they don't have this or it's not that, but it undermines the reality of people's experiences.
Hmm. So tell me about a time when you witnessed or experienced ableism and how did you respond in that moment?
I think at my last job, I would say it was the most obvious to me. So as I've gotten older, I've recognized that the way that I move in the world is different. I don't conform as much, partly just me coming into my own sense of self around being a Black woman and not feeling like I have to consistently conform. I have to wear smaller earrings. I have to wear my hair this way. I can't dress the way I want to dress. And so as I've gotten older, I've refused to be put in a box in the same way. And what I saw at my last job was this notion that my behaviors, the way that I talk, the way that I communicate, is dominant. It's being bossy and controlling and seen under this negative light instead of being seen as Sam has a lot of questions. She's trying to figure out what are the norms in this space. She wants to understand what the expectations are so she can better meet them. So there was an assumption of confrontation. But when you look at the behaviors and some of the phrases I was hearing, it's pretty classic ADHD on the hyperactive side. It's pretty obvious to people who are choosing to be informed that the way that I engage in the work and the way that I show up at work is rooted in me being a Black woman and a Black woman with ADHD specifically.
What do you wish more people understood about the unique experiences of Black people in the deaf and hard of hearing community?
I think for me, what I found is there's this hierarchy almost in communities of these
Mm,
are people who have disabilities, this is what disability looks like, and you're accountable to get your needs met. But I was a teacher. I taught for more than 10 years now. And I remember my first deaf student being in the classroom and just learning the importance of looking at her, not looking at the interpreter. I'm a very verbal person. That's how I'm the best communicator. I'm not as strong of a written communicator. And if I'm trying to talk to her outside of class, often we're doing that via email. And so when we're creating these spaces of support for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, it's recognizing what my norms are and the ways
hmm
that I can show up for them that honors who they are rather than them having to make changes and accommodations and ask for things that I should automatically be doing. For instance, as a teacher, you tend to write on the board a lot, whether that be the old school chalkboard or the smart board. We're still engaging in that way. And something that was pointed out to me was I talk while I'm facing the board. So I'm writing something and I'm facing the board. And so as a student, you then can't read my lips if that's part of how you're communicating with me. And it's such an easy task for me to be mindful of like, okay, I'm going to write something and then face my class. And it's something I should have been taught when I was learning how to be a teacher of this is what it looks like instead of my student having to correct me. Not everyone's going to be comfortable making corrections. And so, me being able to say, I'm going to do the work I need to do beforehand so no one has to come back and correct me later.
Amen. Our disability justice principle states, I would love to learn your perspective on a few of the 10 principles named by disability advocates. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, how does intersectionality, recognizing wholeness, and anti-capitalistic politics show up in your work?
Yeah, I am a Black woman. So immediately I recognize the spaces that I'm in. There's a networking event I go to almost every month, and it's specifically for the disability community. More often, it's physical disabilities and developmental. That tends to be the focus, but not always. And so in that space, it's diverse for types of disabilities with a focus, like I said, on those two. And last time I went to a networking event, another woman of color walked up to me and she was like, I'm so glad to see you. I don't see a lot of women of color in these spaces. And so it's being in a room that's focused on a topic and finding other people who are like you, whether that be disability and a person of color, whether that be disability and a particular gender. And so for me, it's that ability for everyone to see themselves represented, not just in materials, but in providers, in service providers, in those who are supposed to be caring for you look like you.
Hmm
And that helps find wholeness. It helps support wholeness because I don't have to explain as much to you. You already know the first part of things about my identity and my culture rather than me having to teach you so much. And then we can actually get down to work.
Representation matters, absolutely. A few other principles outlined by disability advocates have been interdependence, cross movement, organizing, and sustainability. What part do you think we as individuals can take to align with these principles?
Yeah, I think the first part is we can't do it by ourselves. We, as Black people, I'll say, tend to be really independent. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we're not going to get as far unless we're able to rely and create systems of interdependence. When I think about the work that I do, specifically in sex ed and disability community, I have to do cross movement work. I can't just focus on reproductive justice if I'm not naming the ways that people with disabilities are denied reproductive justice. When we do cross movement work, then we're able to actually honor the wholeness of people. If we're doing siloed work, then individuals have to go to 4 or 5 different places or organizations to make sure their needs are met, instead of I went to one place and that place was well rounded, that place was understanding of how these issues overlap, so I could get the care that I needed for all of the things rather than having to go to different places for different needs.
Amen. There may be some redundancy in this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What responsibilities do individuals and institutions have regarding ensuring Black Lives Matter at school? How does that shift when you think about disability justice?
Yeah, for me, I think the first thing as an individual is to learn your own biases. What is it that you think? How are you showing up in a space? And how is that impacting the ways that you're engaging with your students, the ways that you're engaging in community? When I went to school for my teaching degree, I ended up doing my thesis on the overrepresentation of minorities in special education, with a majority of the time having diagnoses of behavior disorders or other health impairment. So it wasn't based off of specific medical concerns, but rather behaviors that were expected of them that didn't align. And the reality of it is, when we look at Black Lives Matter at school, we're looking at making sure kids are supported and cared for. And when we look specifically at disability justice, we're making sure that kids who need support are getting it, and our kids aren't being pushed into special education when that's not the level of support and care that they need.
So if we truly believe in and implemented disability justice, how would our schools and communities be different?
I think I'll start with schools. If we really cared about disability justice, we would create spaces to hear from people. I will never know all that I need to know about disability across the board. But if I can create space before the school year, if I can create space ongoing throughout the school year for people to tell me things, then I can make sure that I can support them. When I was teaching at the university, I used to start my class with a note card, and I tell the students to, write down things that they wanted me to know that wouldn't be in their file, that I might not pick up in class. And so I had a student write down that due to an accident, they didn't hear as well on the left side of their body. So that helped me put them in a better spot in the room, and me to be mindful when I was talking where I was standing compared to them. I had another student write about how they worked overnights. And so they're like, if I fall asleep, it's not your fault. I'm not bored. But just acknowledging that I'm going to assume something. And I have a sleep disorder. I've had a sleep disorder for over 15 years now. And oftentimes, when I start to get drowsy or fall asleep, there's notions about what that means, that I'm not caring. Or on the other side of it, when I've had accommodations that I can take a nap in the middle of the day, it's like, oh, Sam's in their office napping. Like, what's that? And so it's recognizing in a school that we don't always know what kids are experiencing. We don't always know what their needs are. And it's our job to create space for them to tell us. For the broader community, disability justice looks like us creating space where people feel like they're included, and naming the ways that we've done it. So when I'm going to a place, I know, what's the lighting situation like? Do I have to stand all night? Can I sit down? How is my body going to be in this space? If you have a handicap restroom, what does that look like? Where is it in the building? And so it's making the concrete building spaces, rooms accessible, but it's also making it known to people that those places are accessible. I'm not having to guess or wait until I show up to know what the lighting is, to know what the sounds are, just like the cross sounds. Some places have horrible acoustics, which can be overwhelming, which can be cause various issues depending on the person and what their needs are. So I don't have to show up and then leave. I can be there and know what I'm going to get.
For students, educators, and community members watching, what is one shift in mindset or practice that could begin moving us towards justice rooted in care?
Thank you. I think the first shift in mindset is that I do care. I care about creating what your needs are in an environment where you feel like you are safe and supported. So I think just in your mind, actually caring, actually wanting things to be better for everybody. And then in your behavior, you're not making assumptions. You're asking me, what do I need? And doing what you can to provide that support or have other people provide it. It doesn't always have to be you as the teacher or you as the community organization partner. Reach out. There's amazing organizations that can support various needs and various ways that students learn if you make the connection. So caring enough to take the time to connect to resources that can help students in ways that you can't, and helping in the broader community by shifting your mindset that you know what people need and letting them guide and care about creating an environment that they are included. They don't have to pick and choose where they can and can't go. Instead, they know that they're included because you've done the pre work, because you care to have them in your space.
The esteemed Sam Carwyn,
Thanks
with
for taking the time to talk with me.
nuggets of truth and necessity for us. Oh, thank you for sharing.